So we are a community of women. I would say a community of women chasing adventure. We are actually a sub-brand of Feisty Media. So Feisty Media creates an empowering culture for active women, and we are the gravel cycling sub-brand of that. And that came about, I'm sure we'll get into it, through some chance happenings of a partnership coming together. But yeah, so we provide inspiration, share people's stories, but then also provide the education, especially for active women. So whether it's helping people get to the start line of their first race, helping them understand how to fuel, helping them understand how to navigate menopause as an active woman, or how to get strong, all those things. And then also we provide experiences for women, like our camps, our different events. We have a big event on the radar for next year. So
Ooh.
That's what we are.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Zone to Speak podcast. I'm your host, Juliana. Hey, everyone. At Zone to Speak, I know how important it is to stay healthy, strong, and ready for every ride, workout, and adventure. That's why I'm sharing some amazing discounts on products I personally love, designed to support your health, performance, and overall well-being, whether you are an athlete or just looking to feel your best. Cyclist, their smart pump is a game changer. Compact, efficient, and perfect for keeping your tires road and gravel ready. It's also ideal for travel. You can take it on trips and skip the CO2 canisters. You can even change the tire pressure on the go when switching between surfaces. Get 10% off Smart Pump and 5% off everything else. 15% off down the road cycling gear. Their gear is beautifully designed and performance ready, perfect for long rides, gravel adventures, and everyday style on the bike. 15% off New Zest. Fuel your body with clean, plant-based nutrition. Their Clean Lean Protein provides a high-quality, easily digestible protein source and sustained energy. 15% off Oleos. Oleos offers powerful wellness shots made with adaptogens, nootropics, and functional nutrients to support performance, focus, and recovery. I take Oleos daily in the lead up to any of my races and have the pre-ride and recovery shots ready for the weekend's big training rides. If you are looking for a clean, effective boost, Oleos is it. 10% off high-quality supplements to support your health, from multivitamins to probiotics, collagen, and more. I personally take the Women's Fermented Multivitamin and Creatine, and I feel great with them. No nausea, just steady energy and support for recovery and daily health. 10% off Clearly Not Coffee, a delicious coffee alternative made from functional ingredients like mushrooms, maca, cinnamon, and rhodiola, designed to give you a calmer energy, sharper focus, and immune support. Honestly, I can't live without it anymore. It's been such a boost of energy levels and has helped me navigate perimenopause with more balance and ease. 35% off Frey Skincare, made for active lifestyles, designed for skin that sweats. Their all-natural, vegan, and cruelty-free products keep your skin protected and fresh. I have been using Frey for about 10 years and my skin stays young and it has never had a breakout since. You can find all the discounts listed in the episode description. Just use code ZONE2SPEAK at checkout to unlock the savings and let these incredible products support your health and performance. Now, let's get into the episode. In this episode of Zone to Speak, I sit down with the powerhouse behind Girls Gone Gravel, Kathryn Taylor, a dedicated gravel cyclist, community builder, and an advocate for women in cycling. Kathryn has played a huge role in growing the women's gravel scene. Girls Gone Gravel has become a cornerstone of the gravel cycling community, empowering women to explore the joy, challenge, and adventure of riding off the beaten path. Kathryn has built a platform that not only celebrates the sport, but also fosters connection, inclusivity, and inspiration for women in cycling. In this episode, I will dive into the story behind Girls Gone Gravel, the impact it has had on the cycling world, and Kathryn's own journey in cycling. This episode is all about empowering women, building community, and embracing adventure on two wheels. Kathryn, welcome to Zone to Speak.
Thanks. I like being called a powerhouse.
Well, I love what you guys are doing at Girls Gone Gravel. What a great, uh, I was going to say account, but you are more than an Instagram account. You also have the podcast. You have a big partnership powered by Feisty Media. Anything else?
Yeah, those are the big things we do. We do some live coverage at events, and then we do some camps for women. We just got back from Girona, where we partnered with our menopause community over at Feisty and did a trip to Girona. We do a mechanic camp, which is fantastic for women in the
Yeah,
fall, and just all kinds of. We kind of see what the community wants and look for, is there something we can create that will really help build and grow the community.
I love it. I love that. Getting feedback is super important because we can be doing all we can and think there is a need for it, but maybe there is something else that we haven't thought about it and there's a need. So before we dive into Girls Gone Gravel, tell me in your own words, what is Girls Gone Gravel?
So we are a community of women. I would say a community of women chasing adventure. We are actually a sub-brand of Feisty Media. So Feisty Media creates an empowering culture for active women, and we are the gravel cycling sub-brand of that. And that came about, I'm sure we'll get into it, through some chance happenings of a partnership coming together. But yeah, so we provide, inspiration, share people's stories, but then also provide the education, especially for active women. So whether it's helping people get to the start line of their first race, helping them understand how to fuel, helping them understand how to navigate menopause as an active woman, or how to get strong, all those things. And then also we provide experiences for women, like our camps, our different events. We have a big event on the radar for next year. So
Ooh,
that's what we are.
tell me more. Tell me more. And of course, there is a need out there to have Girls Gone Gravel, because I wanted to ask what inspired you, but I don't know if it was just the need, because we need support. Women, we need support, and I also feel like, I mean, there's so much good information that you pass on. Not just about races and the camps that you're talking about, but it's also industry news that you're passing on equality, and so many other important topics. How did the Girls Gone Gravel was formed
Well, that's
or
a funny
inspired?
story.
Okay.
I worked at a bike shop in 2017, and I was very involved in triathlon. I was very involved with actually USA Triathlon and the regional council, and we were doing a lot of things to get more women at the start line. And even in my local tri club, I was involved in that. And in my local tri club, put some of those initiatives. It was the second or third largest tri club in the U.S., so we had 500 members. We put initiatives in place to get more women into the club. And the last year I coached before COVID, we had like 48% women and 52% men, which was up from like 28% women. And we have more female coaches than male coaches in the club. So I just saw like there are certain things you can do to create the right environment for women to thrive. At the same time, I was working at this tri shop, and I was really burnt out on triathlon. I wanted to get into gravel cycling. My friend had done, at the time it's called DK, now Unbound. And the bike shop owner was kind of one of those dudes, and he's like, "You're not going to like it because it's hard." And that made me really mad.
Oh,
So one night I had a lot of wine, and it was when Instagram was just starting. So I woke up in the middle, like 2 a.m, and I made this Instagram. I was like, Girls Gone Gravel. That would be a good Instagram account. So I just made it. And anybody that's like from
what
my
a
era,
great name.
well, anybody's from my era, it was like a play on Girls Gone Wild, which was back the
Mm-hmm.
90s
Yeah,
thing.
I
And I just thought
remember.
that's really funny.
Yeah,
Some of the younger people don't know what it is, but
yeah.
so I just made the account, and I just started sharing videos of what women were doing, because I was like, we just aren't seeing we're seeing a lot of the guys' stories. It was right around the time where EF was coming and doing their alternate tour. all the guys were sharing their stories, but I wasn't seeing a lot of women do it. And so I just started sharing community stories. And so that's really how it was born. And I didn't know what it was going to be at that time until we really found this partnership with Feisty Media, which I can go into more of that if you want.
So would you say the goals were, when you first started, was just to get more visibility for women doing gravel and getting more women to start line? So, and how has it evolved over time? Where are we now? Where are you now?
Yeah, when it first started, it was really for fun. Then the first in 2020, I think. Well, I had become friends with the team from Feisty Media through just they were doing some things in triathlon, and so I'd known them through that. They did a lot in triathlon, and I'd interviewed the CEO of Feisty on a triathlon podcast that I very briefly had, and just like really loved the way that she was thinking about equality and that women actually are empowered. Like what we need is just to give them the tools. Like we don't need to empower women. We can just give them the tools because we can empower ourselves. And just a lot of ways she was flipping the narratives on their head. And so it made a lot of sense to me. And then as we were starting the Girls Gone Gravel account, she was coming to Atlanta for an event. I lived in Atlanta at the time. And I said, hey, people are asking for a podcast, but I don't want to do a podcast on my own. Would you consider bringing something under Feisty? And she said yes. So that was really what gave me the ability to start a podcast. And I ended up meeting Christy Moan, who was one of the original founders of Unbound Gravel, just through a phone call and asked her if she'd be my co-host. And she said yes. And that opened the door because she knew all the pro athletes. So we ended up having like Allison Tetrick as our very first guest. Wow. And so really the goal, like that was, we decided we were going to do the podcast in February of 2020. Obviously, we all know what happened. I was watching the Mid-South a few weeks later. And on the Instagram account, I was just making comments of like, they're not covering the women's race at all in this. And then people were saying, well, they can't get the vehicles through. And I'm like, we 100% of the time know that the women's race is behind the men's race. Like they didn't plan to get the vehicles through, right? It's not you can't, it's you didn't make a plan for it. Yeah. And so people really responded to that. And so, everything was crazy in 2020. So we started the podcast and then we started a Facebook group, and it was like 1,000 people a week were joining the Facebook group because people were just getting into gravel cycling and women wanted a space to have a safe place to ask questions about everything from what chamois to wear to like what kind of bike should I get to is it safe what do you do for safety when you ride alone? And so that really gave us a lot of information about the kinds of things to talk about on the podcast because we knew what people were interested in and the questions they were asking. So it really helped us build, like everything came together around this community where we didn't actually, Christy and I never met in real life until Unbound of 2021 when we went there for the first time. So yeah, I've really lost your question in that, but that's really how we.
Oh, no, you answered. Yeah, it was, you started for fun and where it has evolved, which is huge. And yeah, you're talking about the coverage of women. Yeah, I was on a race a few years back, and I remember stopping and looking at Instagram a few times, and I'm like, there's no stories of any women. And then I wrote to them and I was just like, hey, where are the women? They're like, oh, sorry, we're just covering the top 10. And I was just like, well, but there are different categories.
Yes.
It's not just the top 10 men, obviously. I mean, it's not every race that a woman can get up to the top 10 general, and, if we don't ask and speak up in a nice way, doesn't have to be a fight. Like sometimes I don't think even organizers, I like to think that sometimes it's not even premeditated. We're not going to cover. It's just so used to like we're covering top 10, we're covering, whatever. No, and then
I get it. It's hard to do, right? Women, and that's why a lot of the women's starts for these big races that have so many sponsorship eyes on them are so important. I don't think every race needs a women's only start, but those women's start, like when you're a group of women. Everybody started together, and there's one woman in a group of. It's really hard to follow the women's race
Yeah.
coverage. So, I
Yeah.
mean, things have really evolved in the last 5 years, and it's exciting to see how it's evolved. And you know, I think we've built such a good relationship with race directors. They come to us and ask, how can we do this better? They want us to be there highlighting the women's field because they know we have a community of fans that are engaged with the women. So it's been really fun. We've had a 5-year partnership. This will be our 5th year going to Unbound Gravel. So, and Lifetime has been fantastic at just really working to build the women's field. And then we're working this year also with SBT Gravel and Gravel World. So it's an exciting year.
Very exciting and very busy season now is starting
Yes.
for you.
Yes.
So you talked a little bit about the comment that your boss said to you at the store, like, "Oh, you're not gonna like it. It's really hard," which made me think, like, I think that's one of the barriers that women get, to get into gravel racing because people are like, "Oh, it's too hard for you." Are there any other big barriers for women getting into gravel, and how do you work to break down those barriers?
That's a loaded question because I think there are a
Sorry.
lot. I mean, there's, and some of these are where we find it in any kind of endurance sport, right? There are the systematic barriers where, women often bear more of the work of the household. Women are, make less money. So it's harder and women are less likely. When I worked at the Tri-Store, a guy would come in and do his very first triathlon and spend $10,000 on his bike and equipment. And a woman would come in on her neighbor's used bike and, she's trying to podium for her age group, and like go back to the sale rack to buy stuff. And so, it's really hard to say this is something you're passionate about and to get you to invest in yourself with, because I think we just have this feeling of guilt of spending time and money on ourselves. So there are those things. There's not a lot of places where you can learn skills. Like, people just assume you know how to do, descending or climbing. We
Yeah.
we do, even at our camps. We used to do a gravel festival, which we're bringing back in a form of that next year. And we would do skills clinics at those festivals because I was like, it's more fun when you know how to descend on your bike. It's more fun when you have some skills for climbing. It's more fun when you know how to cross that stream. So we try to do a lot of that, because we're mostly a digital company. This year we've done a program called More Women, More Miles, where we just, on our podcast every other week, we've been bringing in one of the pro cyclists and talking about something related to training or racing so that people just have the information. You don't have to go and search the overwhelm of the internet. It's at your fingertips from a good vetted source. They're going to help you know everything you need to know to get to the start line and whatever your goal is for the finish, whether it's like, I just want to finish, or I want to finish at a certain time, or any of those things. So those are a lot of the things that we try
Yeah,
to do.
that's a big one. I think you just touched on, which is the information. I have a great friend of mine, shout out Dawn Barnacle. She has a podcast as well called The Metal Set, and she really is trying to do that in the Middle East, because she and I were, when I lived there, we were racing gravel, and we're like, where are the races? The information is spread out. We don't know. So she's trying to also have like one source where women can go and see and find the information and go to the races. So that's really, really key. Super important.
Yeah. I think for women with racing, they want to know that they can finish, and
Yes.
they want to have friends more than men. I think often women, they want to share experiences. That's not always the case, but it's often the case with women. And so I think if you can break down that barrier by creating, we've had people showing up live on our live podcast broadcasts every week. And so they're starting to chat. They're in a Facebook group. They're chatting with each other. Allison Tetrick just offered to ride with 100-mile riders that want to finish at a certain time. So I think we'll probably have a group of
How
15 women
cool.
riding with her at the 100 this year. So that's the other really cool thing, is what you see, especially in the pro field or that elite field in women's gravel cycling, is they really, really want to give back to amateur feel. Like they see that these are their fans and the people that are supporting them, and they are like, how can I support you? And I don't necessarily always see that on the men's side of things.
That's true. And I love that. I was talking to Laura King here on the podcast that, and it's funny because it was her story as well, that when we both wanted to do a triathlon, we were a little bit intimidated. And it took another woman to say, I'll go with you. We can do it side by side. So I think this is so important, not, if pros are doing, that's great. What a great experience for you to do a race side by side with a pro and have that confidence and someone there with you. But also anyone, if you have done it before and there's someone, pay it forward, just do it with someone else, get them into the sport. I think that's a great initiative.
Yeah. And Laura's a great example. She was a very early on supporter. We had her as a podcast guest. And then again, during COVID, they were doing a women's camp and they had to cancel it. And so she pivoted that and she brought it into our community, and we did live webinars every other Friday
Wow.
during COVID. And it was some of these amazing experts talking about mindset. It was kind of a precursor to what we did this year. But, she barely knew me and reached out and said, hey, we really want to do this. Can we do this together? And so, that's what I see in the women's community and gravel cycling is there's not a lot of, well, this is my thing and this is your thing. It's how can we build this thing together because we all have a space and a voice.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. And you have built such a strong and inclusive community. What do you think has been key to fostering that sense of belonging and support among your followers?
Yeah, it has been a lot of work. I'll be honest. People, when they have come to our events and they're like, how's there, like, wow, there's so much diversity here. And I'm like, yeah, that was a lot of intentional work. It was a lot of who we had on the podcast for several years. We've worked with a woman named Brooke Gowdy, who is fantastic. She runs a program. She'd be a great podcast guest. She runs a program called Rowdy Gowdies to get women of color on mountain bikes. And we asked her to co-host our podcast during Black History Month one year. We brought her into our gravel festival. So we've really worked hard to try not to just let it be honestly a bunch of white women doing things, even
Yeah,
though we are a bunch of white women doing things. And then,
I love
we,
that initiative. Really cool. I also try to be as diverse as I can, bringing different guests to the podcast so people connect to different people.
yeah. Yeah. And then I think we've also done things, we were doing our gravel festival for a few years in Bentonville. And that was the time when Bentonville was really rolling back a lot of their protection for trans youth and LGBTQ youth. And so we partnered with one of the big race events, and they wanted to do something with the festival. We were like, well, what if you did a queer happy hour? And we went right downtown Bentonville and did a queer happy hour within our festival. So I think it's
Nice.
like also, again, it's partnering with the right people that have those relationships and those passions to do things. And then just saying, it's important for you to be here. You matter to us. You're a part of this community. The only people that we don't let in are assholes. Like, if you're going to be a jerk, like, this is not the place for you.
Yeah, please leave. Amazing. I love those initiatives. Super, super important. Do you have any stories from the community that you could share of, where you have seen women overcome challenges and reach new heights through cycling?
Yeah. Oh gosh, I probably would have a lot of amazing ones if I in a few weeks, but because we're getting ready to go to Unbound. Oh well, actually, so we did for 2 years the Scrabble Festival in Bentonville, and I think it was the first year we had a whole group of women from Mississippi come, and they had never been to an event. So when we did our festivals, like 80% of the women had never been to any kind of event, no race, no any kind of cycling event. And so they had never been to a cycling event, and they went and they tried some of the routes. And the riding in Bentonville can be quite hard, especially if you're coming from someplace like a Mississippi where it's quite flat. And, you know, they stayed involved like with our Facebook group and stuff. But last year I was at Big Sugar for media coverage, and one of the women came up to me and she said, "You're the reason I'm here for Big Sugar. I just raced my first gravel race, and I would have never had the confidence to do that if I wouldn't have come to that festival. So my
Wow.
friend and I are here." And those are the things that are really meaningful to me, when people come up and tell me those stories, or um, this inspire, because it's not about, to me, it's not about racing. It's about what you learn about yourself in the process of lining up at a start line and overcoming things and believing in yourself. That might not be a race for somebody. It could be going out and doing an overnight adventure or a long ride, or, you know, starting a group ride with your community. But I think racing is such an easy expression of that on one side. And it also tells the industry, because like it or not, that's where the industry looks to see where the women are. It tells the industry, like, we're here and we matter and you better pay attention to us.
Yeah. Yeah. And your festivals, you mentioned you also had an event in Girona. Was that your first international event, or
Yeah.
you're mainly US?
We're mainly US based, but Thompson Travel reached out to us last year and they were wanting to expand their base with women. So we have a community led by Celine Yeager, and it's called Feisty Menopause. And she has a podcast for active women going through menopause. So it was really the first place that somebody was talking about menopause for active women. And we have a lot of cyclists in that group. So when Thompson reached out, they wanted to do, like, we'll do a trip and you can go do strength training and you can do this. And we said, we actually want to just create a space for women in midlife to have plenty of space. Like, we do beautiful rides and then we have a lot of downtime to sit, to relax, to reflect, to be with other women in the same phase of life, because you never get that as a woman in
Yeah.
midlife. And you never get time to just be like, what do I actually want with my life in this season of life? So it was really hard to explain that to them, but we partnered together. So I would say most of the group, we had about 14 women go. Most of them listened to both podcasts. And so Celine and I went along with the trip, and it was fantastic. I think, like, for us, those are things where we just have an opportunity to gather community and have our community together. So we've talked about, doing a big international thing every year, but we're not going to become an international. There are great things happening with women cyclists in Europe and a lot of great leaders over there. So I don't see us trying to expand to do a bunch of events over there. But it was a great experience.
That's great to hear. And yeah, I understand. I mean, the US is also huge. So you have a lot to cover there. It's a lot
Yeah.
of homework already. Yeah.
And I'm American, but Feisty is actually a Canadian company. So we definitely, US and Canada, we have a lot of, um, that's probably 80% of our audience comes from the US and Canada.
And what are some of your favorite gravel cycling adventures so far, and any specific routes or experience that stand out?
Oh gosh. Well, I always tell everybody the last best ride is really the
Everybody that
best ride.
comes on the podcast say the best last ride.
It is just
Montana, yeah.
in Whitefish, Montana. It's like this great little community. The riding is just fantastic, but it's a big enough event that you feel like you're at an event, but a small enough event that you feel like you just have community. And they make it a weekend thing. It supports scholarships for the local community. So yeah, the last best ride is just always high on my list. I mean, Emporia, it's it's more beautiful than you would think, and it just feels like home at this point going there. Like, I get really excited thinking about going to Unbound. And I haven't ridden the course because I'm always there doing media coverage. One year I'm gonna not do media and actually just ride the course, but I do get to go out and ride. I coached camp this year, and it, there's something just beautiful about that wide open scenery there. So there's a couple places I really love to ride.
And would you say that that's also a good destination to embark on your first big ride, or is there any other places you would suggest?
Oh gosh. Well, I will say that the last best ride is a hard ride. It's two big climbs, even in the short one. And then Unbound, it's a quite, if you're like, this is intimidating, um, because it's a lot of logistics. Emporia is a very small town, so getting to that town, you really have to plan ahead. There's a really great series in the Southeast called the Southeast Gravel Series. So if you're kind of on the East Coast of the US, that's a really good one, I think, to start with. They do their races really well, but they're not as the climbing's just not as long and big out there for your first race. And then it still has enough to have that really fun race vibe at it. But I just always encourage people, like, start looking around at what your local races are. If you're wanting to do something, your first, it doesn't have to be this big thing where you travel across the country with your bike. And that's very stressful to like figure out how to pack your bike for the
True.
first, although I do tell people once you learn how to pack your bike into a bag and fly with it, it opens the world to you because you're like, this was not as hard as I thought it was.
That's true. That's true. And speaking of bike, what would you say it's a good setup and gear you would recommend women to start out in gravel cycling?
Oh gosh, I am the worst with setup and gear. I'm like, it seems fine. What I don't actually have a specific recommendation for setup and gear. What I actually tell people is like, don't think about what you want just today. Think about what's your budget and what could you want? And, because a lot of people get sticker
True.
shock when they come in to riding. And I've seen it over and over again. You buy like the cheap, bike, and then you're like, oh, in a year, you really want something more. And so if you can find that thing that's, usually $1,000 is about the entry level. If you can go up to that next level, which is going to be between that 2 and 3, you're probably going to have a bike that you're going to have for longer because you won't be ready to upgrade in a year or wishing you had that. And often it's easier to upgrade your components on those often. So,
or sometimes it's easier to sell as well.
yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm like, what's on my bike? But
Same. I try to do better. I went and volunteer and work at bike shop to learn mechanics and all that. I still sometimes, I don't know, I'm not really good with details. So sometimes I have to ask too. I'm like, what is my cassette? Like, no idea.
yeah.
Is that 50? What is it? I don't know.
Yeah, same. I'm just like, I need big gears to climb when I go to the bike shop, and they're like, okay, this one has it. The other thing is just like the big thing for women is your saddle is going to take a little bit of time to figure out.
Yeah, I think saddle is a huge one. Good point.
Yeah. So if it really doesn't feel comfortable, try other options.
Yeah. Funny story. I a while ago I was on this it wasn't a race, it was just a ride. And I have a women's saddle, which is just, for anyone who doesn't know, it's just wider because we have obviously wider pelvic bones. It's not that much wider at the eyesight, but anyway, so this guy saw my bike. He's like, "Oh my gosh, can I check it out?" I was like, "Yeah." So he took just for a tiny 2-minute spin, and he came back. He's like, "This saddle is so comfortable." Like, yeah, it's a women's saddle. Get one.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So going back to social media, how do you manage the balance between brands and staying authentic to the message that you want to, you started Girls Gone Gravel?
So even though we're now a part of Feisty, like I have full control over that account and how we share things. And I still try to do a lot of things that are just fun and funny and build a community and then sprinkle the education in there. And then now as we're getting into race season, we'll do a lot more highlighting, like we highlight race winners. We also we try to find the thing that they say that's fun and feisty or that's going to resonate with the audience and put that out there and kind of show their personality. So, yeah, it's a mix of those things.
Well, you are doing an amazing job. I think the account is super engaging and it does have a lot of great information. So please keep it up. It's amazing.
I mean, it's hard. We get so much good information on the podcast, and then it's really always, sometimes it's hard to just my full-time job is not to run Girls Gone Gravel. My full-time job is to actually run all of our sales and marketing at Feisty Media. So Girls Gone Gravel is like the teeniest tiny bit of my job week to week. So yeah, there's even more gold mines of information I could be putting out. So
Yeah, it's a balance. Well, we have talked about, the busy season coming up. You have Unbound right at the corner. What's next for Girls Gone Gravel? So, are there any other events, collaborations, or adventures that you are particularly excited about?
yeah, so we are partnering with Steamboat Gravel. So right after Unbound ends, so we did this More Women, More Miles campaign this year with Unbound. So last year I was standing at Unbound, or I was actually having dinner with the CEO of USA Triathlon, who's become a good friend of mine. She's raced Unbound multiple times. She's raced Leadville. And she said, did you know that there are only 89 women on the start list of the 200? And I was like, what? And so I looked and only 69 women finished the 200. And then I was like, well, surely the 100 is better. And so that was what, 6%? And the 100 was, I think, 11% women. The numbers were very low. And so we pitched to Lifetime a program called More Women, More Miles. And we were like, hey, we want to get more women at the start line, which is how we started these podcast series. Well, from that, we've had other races reach out to us and say, hey, can you help us do this as well? So Steamboat, because they changed their format this year, they want to see more women in the race format. And so they're doing some really cool things. So right after Unbound, we're doing a 4-week series with Steamboat Gravel, pushing out their initiative. So it's taking it from, if you just want to finish, to what if you want to take a step up and race, or like go for a PR? What are some things that you can do there? So we have some really great podcast guests lined up for that, leading into SBT Gravel. And then we're also doing some work with Gravel Worlds, because they're working to bring 1,000 women back. They did that a few years ago, and they realized, oh, you can't just do it once. You've got to keep pushing for more women it takes, like, changing a culture takes a while. It seems like people are just figuring out.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then we're venturing into mountain biking a little bit, working with Rome Fest this year.
Ooh.
So just they started dipping their toe into gravel there. So I think we're going to help them lead a gravel ride and do some things there. So yeah.
And in these initiatives, what can you do to bring more women? Because I know, for example, I used to do triathlons as well. And Ironman had a partnership with Women for Tri, and they have extra tokens that they gave in each race for women to go to the World Championship. So trying to get that, number close to 50-50. So what does, for example, More Women, More Miles, what is the initiative to get more women to the start line?
It depends on the event. So what they did was, after registration closed and they saw the numbers where they weren't where they wanted, they gave us 75 additional slots for women. So we had 50 for the 100, 25 for the 200. And I think we filled 24 for the 200 and 50 for the 100.
Great.
And then we've been doing this podcast series. And again, it's been taking a lot of the pro women that we've worked with over the years, and they come on and talk about, for example, Hannah Otto came in and talked about indoor training and strength training. So you're getting to learn from one of the best pros in cycling about, training. So that was their process. With Steamboat, they know, like, it's too late to get more women at their start line this year. But that's what I always talk to races about. Like, probably not going to necessarily see a big change this year. Like, we're seeing that at Unbound because we've been going there for 5 years, right? So it's a lot of
it takes time, like you said.
It takes time. We try to build some FOMO. We try to, when we're there, we're like, this is so fun, like showing people it's not scary. Here's what it's like to be here. So I think some of it is that, and then some of it is just like, we're going to create a space for women to learn. We're going to create a space for women to gather when they are on site. If I'm single, and I have a group of bike friends that I travel with, but there's a lot of things I want to go do, and I want to just know that I have a buddy there when I go there, right? You like to share experiences with people and have that memory. So just creating those connections where somebody has, like, here's my buddy that I see at bike races. So a lot of it is that. And then I think we're already looking to, well, what can we do in 2026 to even take that up a step, where maybe it's offering some more ability to train with us, or things like that. We have in our Feisty portfolio, we have a lot of resources for active women, like our digital courses that really help you. It doesn't, so for example, we have a course on nutrition, but it's not just going to give you a nutrition plan. It's going to teach you all the things about nutrition. So why are we so susceptible to diet culture as women? Why, how fuel works, how our food works in our body, how things like your hormones might change the way that you process food. And then we talk about what kind of nutrition plan works, and you put your own together, because we don't want to just tell people what to do. We want to teach them the why, especially in the culture that we're living in today, right? Like, you need to know how to advocate for yourself and cut through, frankly, a lot of bullshit on the internet.
Totally. And it's great to hear because, one size does not fit all, and nutrition is very individual based. And I agree. Like, if you tell somebody, hey, here's your plan, you might help them, but they are not learning. So I think that's a great initiative that you showed all the whys. And where can people find all this information? Is that feisty.com or Girls Gone Gravel? You can find.
For now, I would go to girlsgonegravel.com. We are
Gravel.
in the middle of building a new website for Feisty Media where we bring all of our brands together. But as all website projects, it's delayed.
Well, you're building a lot. And where do you see the gravel cycling community heading in the future?
Well, that's a good question. People are saying that pros are ruining gravel and that it's going to have its downfall, but I don't believe it. I think that it's just opening the doors for more opportunities, more kinds of biking. I have zero desire to ride on a road anymore because I've had too many friends almost hit by cars, and just like, I don't know, I just love that sound of gravel tires, crunching around. So I think we're just beginning to see what's out there and where things are going to go. And, and I think there are so many opportunities for women right now, from seeing what's happening in the pro fields with women and how exciting women's racing is, to just seeing women, show up at start lines or take, like Lael Wilcox riding around the world. How many people are inspired to take on an adventure, from that? So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It's adding to the ecosystem. I don't think it's taking it away.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Kathryn, I'm so pleased to have you on my podcast. It's a huge honor. I'm a big fan, and really thank you for coming to Zone to Speak.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
And that's all for today's episode. I want to thank the listeners for tuning in. Your support means everything. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider following, leaving a review, and sharing it with your friends.